because a lot of the aid that is deployed to Africa is coming from different governments, government to government transfers. And the issue that we find is it would be great to see these countries and these governments work in a way to, yes, refashion and, really restructure it in a way that delivers. And I'm sure that in their hearts of hearts, that's what they want to do. But then it goes back to the fact that, again, a lot of this is government to government transfers, and it's taxpayer money. So you also get that element where, it's like it's not their money that they're spending. So when I think about the kind of incentives and motivations at play, are they necessarily going to be as effective as, say, a private investor that is looking to invest in a particular industry of a company, of a country, to make a return? So you have this situation where, you've got these different governments through these government departments that are, deploying taxpayer money. There's a famous quote where it says that aid is the transfer of taxpayer money from poor people in rich countries to rich people in poor countries. When we think about, different government leaders and contractors and what have you. And yes, once you have the fact that the source of this money is that of the taxpayers, the people who are making the decisions, it's not their money, it's the taxpayers' money. So you have two issues there. The first issue is that, are they going to spend it as effectively because they're not looking to spend it to make a return? So before you mentioned the fact that these aid organizations should be working with local Nigerian pharmaceutical manufacturers to help build their capacity to deliver those different kinds of medicines. But then again, if it's aid and it's this taxpayer money and it's being given away, it might be, it's more in their interest to see how they can use that aid to maybe help, the pharmaceutical, to help develop the pharmaceutical companies of their own country, because they're giving it away. Whereas perhaps if it was a private bank or, again, somebody who's looking to make a return, they would be more interested in working with the local manufacturers, because that's the way they can save on costs and make it more sustainable.
Okay, so can I respond to that? There are 2 points that you mentioned. One about the taxpayers and the other about private organizations. So let me go with the private organizations first. Bill Gates, there's a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is a private organization that also provides aid for Africa. If what you're saying, if being run by the private sector is what's going to make it more effective, then we would have seen that material impact in what Bill and Melinda Gates are doing and some other wealthy private individuals are doing. But it's essentially the same, because it's not a function of who is providing the aid, it's a function of the whole system itself. Now, I'll come back to that point. Let me go to the taxpayer point. The truth is, it's an illusion to say it's, in theory, yes, but it's an illusion to think that taxpayers have money. Taxpayers don't have money. Governments do. Taxpayers make the contribution. Governments get to decide how they deploy that funds. That's the way everywhere in the world. When governments tell you, "Oh, it's a taxpayer money," they're just giving you the. it's false. If they are hoodwinking you, there's literally nothing you as a private citizen can do in terms of how the tax that you have paid is being deployed. There is little. You can go and vote out the government, but they're going to do what they're going to do anyway, right? So the government is going to deploy it the way they want to deploy it. And the point you made about, the taxpayers are looking for a return on investment, so we'll be more interested in it favoring industries back home. They are not the ones making that call. It's the government that's making that call anyway. So
that's the problem.
No, but that's the problem. But what can you do? You've elected a government as a representative. The government is having the mandate of the people. The government does what it thinks is best for the interest of the people. They are varied
The
and they are
government needs
competing.
to step aside and stop providing aid. Like leave it
Yeah,
to the. I prefer to leave that development to private businesses and the private sector, because again, the government, like you said, they're
why?
not. It's not their money that they're spending. They're spending.
It's
They're
their,
spending other
it's their
people's money.
money.
That's where
It's
it's
their
not
money.
invested as effectively. It's
It's
not their.
their
It's
money.
not their money that they paid for. It's them. It's the money that they're benefiting from actually. So even these
So,
international development organizations,
Timothy,
they have an interest to receive and spend more aid because it expands their departments, their responsibilities, and their salaries. It's
Timothy,
distorted incentives. But yeah, really,
I just want to
please.
say that I agree with Charles in this because I think there's an element that you may be missing. It's true that it's the government that spends the money, but it's not always, again, and it's however you want to say it's government money, taxpayer money. I don't think it matters. You have to remember the reason why the money doesn't go to the local recipients, right, is because it goes to organizations and stuff like that, right? And we're forgetting that a lot of these organizations are already, like you said it earlier, right? They're hiring consultants. It goes to a lot of private people. So you can't disassociate, government aid and private investment. They're the same thing, right? A lot of in the U.S. actually, what happened with U.S. aid actually specifically is that the U.S. aid, they found out they were giving money to, like we saw the information, to like private institutions, right? Like not only consultants and everything, but like private companies in Africa. And the United States specifically, they have an international development finance corporation where it's basically a whole bunch of rich people, private investors, private institutions, and they work in development in these countries. And it's mining, it's like all these resources that we talk about we have in Africa. That's what we're doing. It's all private institutions, right? And then what basically they're trying to do is like, okay, why give this money to USA to spend this money and use this projects when we can just get all of this money and put it into these private institutions to do the work. So, and that's what they were doing already. And funny enough, if you look at the budget, like the USA budget isn't that big. I mean, towards Africa, anyways. It wasn't. I forgot how the figure. But it was like I forgot. It was like $40 billion or something. So it wasn't big at all.
$10 billion per year. So it's
Sorry?
quite a lot. I think it's about $10 billion per year.
We're talking about the United States. Like their budget for a whole bunch of stuff is nothing. But if you look at
Africa, though.
If you look at the institutional, like private investors, international, the budget, it's 10 times that, right? And that's now it's like, why? That's what they're saying. It's inefficient, right? The whole Doge thing, right? Why have USA and this whole facade, whatever, when we could just put it there? And then again, let's be honest, like Trump, he's rich. He has all his rich friends in government. If you park all the money over there, straight up, they receive the money and they do the projects. Right, which is why he appointed who did he appoint? He appointed his wife's son. I forgot where did he appoint
Jared Kushner.
Yeah, I forgot where he appointed him, somewhere at one of our countries in Africa. Because again, and where do they work? Like they're in the government, right? But it's all private. It's all private, and it's always been. So we can't again, just going back to like what Charles was saying and what you were saying. It's we can't disassociate and say that, oh, this is taxpayer money, it's the government. No, it's always that is taxpayers' money, but it always goes to private institutions. And yes, I think it's dressed up sometimes into like these facades of like, let's help these I don't want to use the LGBTQ stuff. That's what we see in the news, right? Oh, they're wasting money there. But like they waste money on all these other little projects. And some projects work, like with healthcare and everything. But a lot of the time, again, the money makers, it goes to making money, right? It advances the U.S. state's interest, which is, okay, let's make money. Let's go into mining. Let's go into oil, copper, all of these things. So, and that's always been private, and always will be, and it's not stopping, right? Now that they removed it by U.S. aid, but they already have their own other branch, which is where they'll continue to be investing and making money for themselves. But yeah, Charles you made a great point. Like, it's true. Look, we're all taxpayers. And we have no say where our money goes. You know what I mean? We should, but we don't, and there's nothing we can do about it.
But I guess the point what I was saying is the difference between taxpayer funded projects and then those that are privately funded is to do with the source of funding. So yes, the example you gave there, where you've got US aid, I don't know what happened. Wait a moment. Okay, yes, where you've got US aid providing funding to, say, build a hospital for HIV patients, and then a private contractor takes on the contract to build the hospital. So yes, you have the private sector acting as a contractor there, and that is where they do take advantage of the fact that it's a government project, and they will, give a bloated quote and take that little bit longer to finish the project, and boost people's salaries, and take advantage of the public purse and the leniency that comes with that. Because again, yes, a lot of these aid projects are taxpayer financed. They're coming from the taxpayer money. Whereas if we think of another example where a private healthcare corporation, let's say like United Healthcare,
I know.
build a hospital, they're not, it's not that the source of the funding is not from the taxpayer. It's going to be from their shareholders through selling shares. It's going to be from the bank, and there's a need for them to generate a return. So it's a market element at play versus just getting free money from the taxpayer. But yeah, you can say, Malik?
Yeah, but like, has a lot to say, but like even that, for that example you say, I think that's fine. At the very least, the end goal is that you built a hospital and benefits people, right? The problem is when because the aid is not just like, it's funny enough, a lot of people think US aid is like aid, like, oh, let's help build hospitals, but no, it's for developments. It's a foreign political agenda, right? They also go in there and they build projects like mining and copper and all these other things, right? To extract resources. So the problem is when they go and do that instead, because then, and directly correlates, it also helps our private companies to share, grow, and return money to stakeholders. Because if an American company goes to, let's say, Congo, and they're like, okay, we want to extract copper there, and then they're getting money from the U.S. government through aid, like U.S. aid or the International Development Finance Corps, which is another like American government agency. Africa's not benefiting, but America's benefiting completely. You see what I'm saying? Like, and from both sides, because now the private company, they benefit because now they're getting returns, right? And also the government's benefiting because they're investing money into their own private company, right? As opposed to the example you gave, if it's a hospital, sure, but at the end of the day, okay, fine, you built a hospital. At the end of the day, it's going to help you. So to me, that's the difference. So it ultimately doesn't matter for whether it's taxpayers' money or not. But even if you want to use the taxpayer money, at the end of the day, it's going back into American shareholders, and they're making money, and they win, right? And we lose.
Yeah,
so, true. But the difference is when it's coming from the taxpayers, there's not as much oversight on how the money is spent. But when the source of the money is coming from the business's own money, like banks, the selling of shares, they want to make a return, so there's less likely to be waste. It's more going to be directed towards economically viable projects. So it's the source of funding. But yeah, go over to you, Charles.
Timothy, let me ask you a question. Do you think aid is a business? Do you think aid is supposed to bring direct returns? Do you think it's an investment?
No. By its very definition, in terms of it's being funded by taxpayers, and it's seen as money given away. It's not supposed to be a business. But that's why I believe, again, charity, if we look around the world and we look at the largest, most dominant economies in the world, charity and aid didn't get them to where they were. It was business and the role of the private sector and technological innovations, and it's
I think
that gets them rich, not aid.
I think you're you're looking at this thing from a very narrow perspective, from like a periscope. You know, see, development is multifaceted. There is the um, there is the part of the private organizations, the part of capital. There is also a part of government. There's part of aid. We give clearly. I give an example of Germany. I give an example of Japan. Right? You cannot say that the aid did not help them. However, there were other aspects as well. There were other things that worked in coordination to make sure that their economies became successful. But you are thinking private, 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 private. I asked you a question about what is the purpose of aid. It's not supposed to be a business. So even from your answer, it precludes what you're suggesting. It precludes private investment for the purpose of profits. If I'm going to come in as someone who wants to give aid and the purpose of my giving aid is to drive profit, you've defeated the aid from the get-go, right? Because you saw clearly there is a need and these people are indigent, these people cannot afford these services or these things. That's why you're stepping in with aid. So for you to make it about, oh, well, we need private organizations to come in and make it more efficient, make it profitable. Like, what what profit are you talking about exactly? Now, no, I don't see how it relates to aid. Malik gave an example of how the aid can actually be profitable in the sense that the Western government are using it to buy goodwill. They're using it to buy access to African resources, right? Which means that American companies can come and operate, have mining licenses, and so on and so forth. That's how they are going to benefit. Ultimately, what you're saying, there are returns. In fact, there's too much returns for the West in this whole arrangement. There is already too much return. It's not a direct return in the sense that you're not investing X dollars and it's leading to the sales of X Y dollars, right? You're investing X dollars in this direction and you're ripping it from another direction. So I really don't get your argument for a privatization of aid. It doesn't work. You can, maybe you can call it something else. Maybe it's business. If you want to say it's business, then it's fine. But it can't be aid when you are looking at profits. It doesn't work.
That's why I think you need to remove aid. It needs to be, the focus needs to be your business. Again, we mentioned that stat before where we look at $2.5 trillion of aid has been directed to Africa since 1960. That is the largest, that's much larger than any other region in the world. So year after year, all of this aid is pouring into the continent. And in many ways, the continent is worse off relative to other global South regions despite all of that aid. Again, whether we're looking at India, China, Japan, Brazil, so many different economies, it wasn't even the examples of again, Japan, West Germany, South Korea. Aid played an important role in helping them rebuild after being decimated by a war. It played a role in providing some emergency funding and bridging them over to a particular base. But more than anything, it was to do with I guess it was, part of it was down to the governance of these countries, but also, the expansion of these countries' private sectors. The fact that with Japan and Korea, they built and empowered large kind of government-assisted and government-owned companies. They invested a lot in technology and used the savings of their people to help direct that. But a lot of these countries are becoming rich through private sector expansion business.